He's a very youngster, budding startup founders. And well, not just one, but in few years of span, he actually managed to have two startups. The founder and CEO of CoffeeSpace. And it's a very unique coffee space, which is not a dating portal, but it's actually a co-founder marriage portal where people can find each other, take their next ventures or next entrepreneurships hand in hand.
So it all began with one boy. So it was a 17-year-old who reached out through Facebook. It was a cold message like, Hazim, I don't think you'll reply to this, but if you do, I have a question. And I wrote an article about it in 2020. The article was called Turning a Fishing Rod into a Fishing Boat. I didn't even know I wanted to do a startup. Growing up, exposed to the whole medical sector from an early age, it was the only thing I wanted to do. But until the age of 16, my ambition was to be a neurosurgeon. That was what I wanted to do. But I went to a boarding school in Malaysia, and in my high school, accounting was compulsory. And at the end of the penultimate year of high school, at the age of 16, we had to come up with a document, a 10-page folio, to research what you want to do after high school. And this is unique. Let me just do this as a passion research project. When I finished the portfolio, and I just told him that I think, Papa, I think I'm changing my ambition to be an accountant. Or I want to be in this finance, accounting, economics field. And he told me, maybe you need some sleep. I just knew I wanted to build a platform that allowed many more interactions like what Karthik and I had. We were working full time. I was at World Bank. My co-founder, Corinne, was at Facebook. And yeah, we did this as a side project rather than hastily quitting your job and just going all in before. It's a runway. It's a parallel runway. The reason we zoomed into the founders and startup ecosystem specifically was because for Council Lab, on the supply side, finding a co-founder, what this means to a person's life is very huge, because if you actually find a compatible co-founder, you might be serious about the startup path. The impact in terms of how much it changes life.
Here, the business model itself is little based on the social entrepreneurship, where it is based on the will. So how did you made that equation work?
It was an experiment, as you have to do with these things. If you don't know exactly what is the best, you will never know the ideal business model. Is something you iterate. If you should consider what is the potential upside, what is the potential downside. And for the most part, many things, if you don't try it, you'll never know. If it's a startup you want to build, it better be a hair on fire problem for a lot of
Welcome to Passionate Pulse podcast. Today we have a very wonderful guest. He's a very youngster, budding startup founders. And well, not just one, but in few years of span, he actually managed to have two startups. He's none other than Hazim Mohamad, the founder and CEO of CoffeeSpace. And it's a very unique coffee space, which is not a dating portal, but it's actually a co-founder marriage portal where people can find each other, take their next ventures or next entrepreneurships hand in hand. He's solving a very specific niche problem in the startup world. And I'm very excited to talk to him and understand the story behind CoffeeSpace, especially when we have a lot of folks which are actually doing similar work, and what's the need of this specific niche platform that has arisen, and a lot to unfold behind the young startup. Hi, Hazim. How are you?
Hi, Pranadi. I'm good. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here as well with you. And it's a very exciting space that you're working at. So I would like to touch base on the CoffeeSpace history for all our audience, how the CoffeeSpace actually born from student to founder, how your journey was.
Happy to share. So it all began with one boy. So it was a 17-year-old who reached out through Facebook. It was a cold message like, Hazim, I don't think you'll reply to this, but if you do, I have a question. I don't know what to do with my post-secondary school life. Can you guide me? Yeah. I was about 2 months into my job at the World Bank. I just started work then. So the boy and I were 7 years apart. But I tried to imagine 17-year-old me. I didn't have the courage to do that. So that intrigued me enough, the fact that this person had the courage to reach out for a cold message. And yeah, I responded. we had a call. He wanted to do philosophy or computer science. And like I was doing financial engineering, which had not much relation to either. So I told him, I'm not the right person to guide you specifically on these things. But yeah, we can continue having calls and I'll make introductions. So over a period of 2 years, so this was from March 2018 to March 2020. We spoke. Yeah, I made introductions and he did a bunch of like very impressive things.
Mm.
And I wrote an article about it in 2020. So yeah, just continue. And this was the start of COVID, of course. The article was called Turning a Fishing Rod into a Fishing Boat. So it's a play on give a person a fish you feed for a day, you give a fishing rod. But I think this boy converted that fishing rod to a fishing boat. Like, yeah, he just ran with it. So, and that article basically, like, yeah, semi blew up on LinkedIn and Facebook. And that's actually how I found my co-founder. She responded to the story. She reached out to the boy directly because the person's name, he wanted to take a gap year. He got into Columbia University in the US, but he wanted to find scholarships. And it was also COVID. He's like, why would I do university remotely? Yeah. Corinne said, I know you from Hazim's article, you want to do computer science, you want to self-learn, let me guide you. So that was the X factor I was looking for in a co-founder. I didn't even know I wanted to do a startup. I just knew I wanted to build a platform that allowed many more interactions like what Karthik and I had.
Right. So Karthik was located where?
He's in Malaysia.
Okay, so he's from your home country, and that's how he figured it out that Hazim is in MIT. Let me just reach out to him, or it was just a random post that it actually happened to you.
Yeah, he just cold reached out on Facebook. We were not connected to.
There was not a common group also you were connected with?
He is from my high school, but we are 7 years apart. So
that doesn't matter. So basically, he got a connection where there was a little thread that could say that, oh, this is the senior who is landing up.
Has been one of the teachers.
Yeah, actually, it's so fascinating to see a lot of youngsters actually now doing research on their own, and a lot of platforms where we say like people, the youngsters are spending time, they're actually making good use of it. And that's how your story started of Council Lab, which was your first ever startup. So that was actually incubated when with this idea itself, or there were like many calls that happened subsequently with you? So
from the first call, we basically interviewed about 100 university college students, like people pre-university at A levels doing the pre-university programs out there. And we realized like, yeah, okay, this is valuable to them. They do want to interact to figure things out. So like, yeah, they have hypotheses, assumptions of what doing this course in university will be like, what this career path or that career path might be. But talking to someone who's actually doing it for real time rather than what could be slightly outdated information online, etc., can be very helpful. So it was, and it was based on the book, The Mom Test. That was the first startup book we finished. How do you do a series of questioning such that even your mom won't lie to you whether or not it's a good idea?
That's wonderful. So that actually helped you. But let me just reverse the gears and let's go back a little bit. So at the time of the Council Lab concept that arises, like when you understood like multiple calls were happening and there are a lot of students who are in need to get the right guidance, although there are LinkedIn, Facebook, there are different college groups that exist and still people are not getting the relevant help. So how did you pinpoint that a simple pain point that, okay, this is still existing and for that I need to build a lab or a app called as Council Lab? How did you arrive at that data point? Because it was difficult, and especially when you were from the accounting background, finance background, you were not having a touch with the tech. Of course, the Canon came into the picture of this and you became a good friend. But how was that journey? This is a very important journey where a lot of people are struggling right now. And I'm considering that this podcast would give them a little bit of hint and a hope to move forward. So if you can unfold that mystery, that would be really insightful.
Yeah. So how it began was just, Corinne, my co-founder, and I, like, we just started over weekends. So it was discussing things we should learn, we should understand of what it takes to build a platform like this. What is the exact problem? Who do we target first? Who do we help first? And given that there was layers here, you have the demand side, which were the students, and the supply side. But what we started learning was that even the supply side could be demand So people who have worked 1-2 years may want to speak to people who have worked 3-4 years who has done the first career switch. So yeah, there were layers of this. But yeah, it's just something we did consistently over weekends. There were tasks which we assigned to each other. Okay, we're going to discuss this every Sunday night, basically for 2-3 hours. And that's what we did for the first few months, really. We were working full time. I was at, as mentioned, World Bank. My co-founder, Corinne, was at Facebook. And yeah, we did this as a side project that we were passionate about. And we did courses in like Startup School by Y Combinator. Rather than hastily quitting your job and just going all in before, it's a runway. It's a parallel runway. You can do your work as long as this doesn't affect your work too much. You take it as like a hobby. It's almost like what you do in university as a club or like as a passion project.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So after finding out the problem, you also did the A to B testing to figure out whether this is what we want to launch first or this is what we want to launch later. And then you build a product map accordingly. And also with the help of a lot of startup schools that exist now remotely also, where people can just have online courses getting done, and they started it. The other part to it is like the council have was in full progress. It was helping student. It was actually booking lot many calls, and students were getting help. There were mentors who were getting onboarded. They were getting help. But was that a business model, I mean, that you had struggled with, or you were like very firm that after certain calls you will start charging people? Because it's a very, when you see a career portal where the people are applying for the job, it's very clear that the employers would pay for those portals in order to host the jobs, and then the portals can run. But here the business model itself is little based on the social entrepreneurship, where it is based on the will. So how did you made that equation work?
Yeah. So what we tested with was, I mean, it was an experiment, as you have to do with these things. If you don't know exactly what is the best, you will never know the ideal business model. Is something you iterate. But what we did here was optional tipping. So basically, let's say I booked you for a call. I wanted advice from you on like hosting a pod. So what would happen is like after the call, it was optional for me to treat you to this different coffee badges, whether it was like a bronze, silver, or gold coffee badge that will appear in your profile, and it was 10, 20, $50. And what we found at the time was like about 50-60% of people were treating after these calls. Of course, but the people who were treating were actually not really students. It was either university students who had a part-time job or like people who have started working. So the earlier stage students who was in high school or right after high school, it was harder for them to treat anything. And yeah, this is more of like a treating model, right? It's Patreon example, like, yeah, anyone can just treat these people creating content if they wanted to. So, and we take 20% of that. That was the initial business model.
Yeah, but it was hard, right? I think.
Yeah, it was hard. Like when it's not very clear how much you should pay,
Right.
And the people who you expect to pay, the demand side here, not those who would have the highest ability to pay just yet because of the stage of life. Yeah, the economics of the ability to pay is one, but also the frequency of it, right? You don't need these calls for too long. Like you may want a call to learn about how to get into a master's program. You talk to someone who's done it. But you're not going to have calls again and again and again. Like once you get that master's program offer, you get that job, that internship. So it was also the cyclicality of behavior, like the one-off nature. Sure.
Right.
After a few months, you might have a call for something else. It was rather irregular, inconsistent behavior.
Yeah, so there is no subscription model. You could have evolved with that. Maybe you could have had the sponsorships, like sponsorships from the universities who are
It's possible. Yeah.
That could have been added tips more and it could have been beneficial. But nevertheless, that venture actually came up in 2018, I believe, with the
It was 2021.
Actually, the concept came at 2018, but it actually came to life 2021.
If you assume it started with the interaction with Karthik, that's correct.
Okay, but actual working project was for a year or two, I believe.
So we only started working on it in like basically middle 2020, Q3, Q4 2020. That's when we started doing it over the weekends.
That was quite fast to the life then,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's the thing, right? Once you start having project partners, potential co-founders, etc., like things move a lot faster because you may have these itch of ideas you have in mind, as it with anything, unless you have someone else to do it with. For most people, it's going to be very hard to do something like, yeah, that is as massive a scale as this, as what building a startup is. Yeah.
Right. And then just after that, 2 years from then, now we are looking at a CoffeeSpace, a total different portal, which is actually serving the co-founders. Like you went through a typical journey of finding your co-founder. You were lucky to find your co-founder
I
and it
was lucky to
worked
find
out,
it that way.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
many people struggle to find that. And sometimes a lot of people are actually shy enough to come forward to such medias and get connected. Or even nowadays, like there is a LinkedIn, a good avenue where you can message people, book a coffee with them, and go forward. But still, some people have that hesitance. I know you're very bold. That's how we got connected. And I'm your beta user now. It's working phenomenally. But not everybody is bold enough to do that step, and having these portals absolutely help those innovators to find their matching founders. So how Council Lab converted to CoffeeSpace now? I mean, I
Mm.
wouldn't say converted, it is still on a halt, but
The reason we zoomed into the founders and startup ecosystem specifically was because for Council App on the supply side, the advisors, quite a few were founders. Students wanted to learn about the entrepreneurship journey, so they were talking to these founders. But what happened very soon after that is like the founders started talking to one another. I mean, initially I just thought it was going to be a few interactions, but no, these founders over a few months, like they were talking a lot more to each other than to students. So I started interviewing them. I'm like, what's happening here, right? Why are you guys talking to each other rather than to the students? And they're like, Hazim, sure, getting a job for these students, yeah, it's not easy. It can be quite difficult, but building a company is very, very tough. So having the support, the network, like, yeah, engaging between ourselves, sharing best resources, whatever, is very valuable to us. So it was purely data points that showed us this was a much more engaged, active group over a longer period, because as a founder, you just need to solve so many things. And yeah, it's not a one-off problem you need to solve. It will be a series of things over a prolonged period as you build the company. So that is how we decided to focus on the founders. Actually, it was a subset of the group from Council Lab.
oh, and that's how your journey evolved and the product evolved, and a lot of things that I see. So, tell me how the CoffeeSpace will differ out from a lot of the portals of the co-founder match that exist. For
Yeah.
example, a very common, most of us have used it, as a Y Combinator. How does a CoffeeSpace makes a difference, and what
Yeah.
is that you're looking at?
Yeah. So there are three main things we feel. So it's the 80-20 rule. We feel like for the most part, YC gets 80% of it right. But what is the 20% that makes this a product that truly captivates people, that truly makes it do what it's supposed to do magically, right? So it's like how Facebook won over MySpace. For the most part, many of the features were quite similar, but Facebook tweaks about 20% of it in 2008-9 when they actually overtook MySpace. Because MySpace was a hit in terms of number of users for almost 5 years, even though they only launched 6 months before Facebook.
Yeah.
So that is the same idea here. And the thing is, the current YC platform to us is more similar to the early days of dating apps where you have directories, you can filter, etc. It is not to the level of like Hinge, Bumble, which have been optimized to cater to the group, and like, yeah, the app experience with an algorithm powering it is very powerful. And yeah, it's things which you want people to do it easily to find the people they want rather than clicking through a lot of people. So if you think about how dating apps work now, you have the gallery, you have the recommended people, yeah, you have these different tiers which give differentiated experiences, etc. So we want to take where, yeah, like YC is from dating apps, where it was like 5-10 years ago to like the current day and more, because with the implementation of AI as well, we can go even further. For example, if I wrote about an idea and you wrote about an idea, and our ideas are deemed by the LLM to be rather similar, That
Hmm.
is a strong point to match people up. There is no idea matching right now on any of the co-founder platforms out there because it requires the use of GPTs, OpenAI's embeddings, APIs to do so. Beyond the other matching of like location, portfolio complementarity, idea, industry of interest, etc. So we want to make it smart. We want to make it easy. We want to save people time, and having the calls automatically scheduled after a match means it's a higher barrier to want to say yes. So rather than swiping and just saying yes to 100 profiles, you will not say yes to 100 calls. But yeah, it means the yes that you do go for is higher burden of proof to yourself before you say yes.
Yeah, and I also have noticed with the coffee space, the type of questionnaires initially for onboarding are, it's from my own experience that I go through. I think they were more relevant, more pinpointed, and having the exact statements to come out. I think the question curation has come out really. I don't know how about the further journey that goes. I'm not yet there. I couldn't find, and I've accepted a couple of matches to be honest, but let's see how the further process goes to define the portal. So I cannot comment on that from a personal side, but I'm sure that you have a good path. There are people who are upholding this entire process, and every time a new feedback comes in, you are actually right now in a place where you can intervene, that you can pause there and build your model. So tell me something about how you have evolved since the beta users have come into the picture and how it has really helped you. And I think getting the beta users was also very, I wouldn't say a difficult journey for you, who is very social, but still there is a learning curve there. And if you can unfold that, that will also be helpful.
Yeah. So we started working on the co-founder match idea in June this year. It was right after we finished the accelerator program with Ansler in Austin. So we're like, okay, we have this platform of founders, investors, but let's go deeper into the exact pain points that we can help solve. And two came up, co-founder match and fundraising, because finding a co-founder is an existential level problem. If you don't have a co-founder, for the most part, you won't proceed with the project. Like, it's the only thing you want to solve first. It's hard for you to do everything else, and yet you can't move at the speed you want. Also, of course, fundraising, right? Like, yeah, any venture at some point or another, even if you're bootstrapped, like, yeah, you will probably need some funding to help you sustain the initial part as you start generating revenue and reach some form of sustainability, profitability. So, co-founder match is what we chose after interviewing both sides. I mean, like for the founder investor matching fundraising aspect, and yeah, this co-founder search, because co-founder matching, for the most part, is an algorithmic and network question. If you have a large enough network and a good enough, you can serve most people relatively well, no matter what specificities of what they're looking for. Because the difference between dating and co-founder search is like, it's a lot more objective in what you're looking for, like in terms of the portfolio, the time zone difference, location, like, yeah, and the idea complementarity, years of experience, maybe you're looking for age difference. When it comes to dating apps, it's a lot more subjective, right? Like, yeah, what makes you swipe on a person or another. More subjective part of co-founder search will just be, okay, after you have the first call, how do you go from there to actually becoming co-founders, right? Like, yeah, the second, third call, a trial period to know if you can work well together. Because for you to want to spend 5-10 years building a company with someone who you just met, you're gonna have to have that period where you actually build that rapport and test each other's compatibility. But yeah, what we're solving, it's a two-stage funnel. Getting to the first call, just getting someone who on paper is interesting enough, suitable enough to get on the first call is what we're doing now. The next part will be, how can we help people optimize the trial period to decide yes or no of becoming a co-founder as quickly as possible? Because none of the current products out there are solving for that specifically. Like, yeah, the second part of the funnel. How we have evolved from the start. So in the beginning, we did not build a product before we validated it. So we're just like, okay, let's interview some folks, get to know what the ideal user experience is, and just ask them, right, is this something you'd be willing to pay for, and what would you be willing to pay for? So we got our first paying users within 2-3 weeks of launch, basically. And what we did was like, based on all the interviews, this is what we're going to do. You give us your preferences, your profile. We're going to give you candidates each week. We are the algorithm. We are the AI doing it manually from our database of like thousands of people looking for co-founders. And if both of you say yes, we just schedule the call. And would you pay for this, right? And yeah, we charge this X amount. We got dozens of people paying just for this manual version of it before we built it. So this was June and we built it in July. So we built it using Flutterflow just as this initial version. Yeah, thus far actually has been serving pretty well. It's been fairly stable. There's some, because Flutterflow is not really production level, no code generally, right? But it's getting better. So it is an experiment we're running ourselves. How far can this tool go before we actually need to code it up ourselves in Flutter or something? Yeah. Yeah. But the first version of the beta that came out in August and what it is now, there have been a lot of optimizations, especially from the onboarding perspective, the kind of data points we want to learn from people to be able to feed into the algorithm to do good matches. Because what we learn is like, if you have too much open text and people write, it becomes noise for the algo. They cannot discern what is actually important or not from this write of, like, let's say you wrote 3-4 paragraphs or something. But the algo has gotten a lot better. It was only around mid-September that we got to a point, okay, we're just going to let the algo do it. Before that, we had the algo do it and we will review the results manually. Of course, because it has grown, we cannot do that anymore. We cannot review every single potential match manually anymore. So now it's just a matter of tweaking the algo parameters to be able to increase the percentage of people accepting an actual matches.
Yeah, and I think now it's getting better, I'm sure. Yeah. So there is also some phenomenal act you're doing. How a lot of the dating companies actually, they do this. You can go on a hike and just figure it out whether that's the right feel for you. Something like that you're doing. Hike for co-founders in this sector. You just join, and even if you're not there, you can still register and go for a hike and get a feel and look. So that's a different angle I see that has come, and it has given more life. So how will you cater this with the different geographies now? Because that's a scaling problem I see.
Yeah. So the events that we hosted was more related to the earlier version of CoffeeSpace that wasn't focused specifically on co-founder search. So the idea was, okay, we want to build a critical mass of founders, investors in San Francisco, Bay Area in particular. We hosted things in New York, Singapore, in Austin as well. But it was more to building that initial critical mass of folks. Like, yeah, it was. So if you look into literature of like growth hacks, how you get your first 100, and doing these events is how some of these biggest companies we know now, Airbnb, they just went to these people, right? Like, yeah, they host the events, even dating apps like Tinder and all, they host the events to get the initial critical mass. So whether it's the only first 1,000 or you start having brand ambassadors in different cities to be able, because if there is an incentive alignment between people in different cities of the world, tech hubs in the world who might want to host these kind of things, maybe they get annual membership, like free lifetime premium tier of like our service or something. Like, yeah, there has to be enough of an incentive. It cannot purely only depend on goodwill of people around the world. It's harder for people to do that in a prolonged period. Maybe they'll do it one-off a few times, but yeah, if you really want a structure around this. But yeah, we feel like for the second part of the co-founder match process, which is the actual trial period, meeting up and figuring out if you actually are compatible personality wise, working style wise. But yeah, it was a growth hack basically. At the moment, our focus is on the online platform, the algorithm. But
yeah, I think along with that, if you cater such events even further, I mean, that's just my opinion, it will help. Because now then the people actually get to meet each other. And also along with that, you can get a lot of talks where these things can help. You can come up with the successful stories on that kind of an event and they can talk about it. So I think that will add a different human touch to the portal. I mean, this is just a suggestion. It may not be, you have to take it, but I see that that can go further. So the CoffeeSpace right now we are looking for the beta users. What is the action call you like to give us for the viewers or the audience who are tuning in today?
If you're looking for a co-founder, or even if you're earlier stage, right? You're working full time, you have an idea, you're curious about maybe exploring. And if there's someone else who is also interested in that, at least for one, it validates okay, you're not crazy, right? You're not the only one thinking of it. So the action item is just, if you're interested, you can go to cofoundersearch.com or like coffeespace.com. There is a tab specifically on co-founders search. You can sign up there. Basically, we have 13,500 people in our database at the moment, and we are onboarding from there to the platform as we scale. And if you are curious at all about possibly working, not necessarily directly quitting your job, becoming a co-founder, but just exploring, as I did with my co-founder those years back, 2-3 years ago, over weekends as we work full time. Would love to have you on board.
That's wonderful. So far, are there any success stories that you have figured it out in this beta phase right now with you?
Yes. Actually, we do. The first couple of success stories came in week 6. Basically, this was around mid-September. 2 pairs in the same week told us. So one was Sarah Creech with Ted Lin. Both were looking for travel. And this is interesting. Both wanted to build in travel. Both were committed to the ideas. But because the ideas were so complementary, because of what GPT saw, what they wrote were basically similar in nature. And they had perfect complementarity. Tadlin is technical. Sarah is non-technical. She was Nike in design sales. So it was a perfect match. And yeah, they matched up basically within the first 3-5 calls on CoffeeSpace, which even we didn't expect for it to be that fast. So this is one. The other one is Paritosh and Abhishek Dev. Paritosh Kulkarni is a current VC interested in building a smarter way to vet deals, like from the venture side. And Abhishek is in Yale now doing a PhD in financial economics, and he is technical, but he has also done his own startup before, raised over $1 or $2 million from his prior ventures. That is the second success story. And I've already heard recently, 2-3 weeks ago, that there's more people who have already started doing trial projects together. So it's definitely encouraging. And it's very exciting for us to see the impact that some of these things are already doing. And it's a huge thing, right? Finding a co-founder, what this means to a person's life is very huge, because if you actually find a compatible co-founder, you might be serious about the startup path. The impact in terms of how much it changes life if they do find a suitable match definitely fuels our energy each day.
Yeah, and it brings up the good innovations to the life, right? It doesn't stay within your heart, but it actually comes to the life, and the impact to the community with those innovations is immeasurable sometimes. So I think you're actually doing a good work. So let me just reverse the gear again and understand, you being a founder, one of the founder, and Karine being another founder, how this goes, because a lot of people, when they come together, they sometimes want a similar partners. So how this complementary equation works, because you're from the account finance background, you were a chartered finance analyst before, so you're looking at as a CFO and other parts of it, whereas Karen is purely focused on the technical part of it and also doing something more. So how this equation goes, just our audience to understand, when they're looking for forward for the co-founders, what are the factors sort of that they should look forward to make their venture successful?
There are a few variables which go into the equation. I mean, the algorithm, but also, of course, it's things people have told us that matter to them in finding a co-founder. So the top 3 are always like portfolio. So what roles do you cover? What roles do you want the person working with you to cover? If you're doing sales marketing, you want a person to help to work on the product engineering, AI, ML side, then that's something you specify. Another one is location. So do you have a preference to only want to be matched with people in your location within a certain mileage, right? Let's say it's only San Francisco City, or you're open to people in your country, or you're open to people in multiple cities. Location is the second big one. And the third one is idea or / industry. At least you're in the industry that I want to build in. We are both. So sometimes all people want is the portfolio. As long as you can do the work, even if you don't have direct industry experience in it, you have the skill sets needed to do this portfolio, you can still be fine. We've seen a lot of different examples of people who say something and suddenly they get the match and they're like, okay, actually, this is an interesting profile. This is an angle I didn't think of before. Because as you get these recommendations and you tell us yes or no, we will take those into accounts and basically incorporate this into the next recommendation. But yeah, so portfolio, location, idea, similarity, industry. You also have whether you're committed to an idea or not. If I'm committed, you're committed. Maybe it's going to be harder and the idea are not exactly similar for us to work together.
Right.
And the equity you want to share. So if you're 1 year into the project and you're only willing to give, let's say 20-30% instead of 50%, this is something the other person should know as well. Because if it's expectation is 50-50, but one side of the party does not want to do that, then yeah, that becomes very hard for that to become a successful match.
Thanks for those tips. It was interesting to understand about your startup and entrepreneurship journey so far, and also understanding about how you started, how you took the guidance from Y Combinator and some other portals that existed to build a startup. But as a startup entrepreneur, many startup entrepreneurs or even the experienced ones, they always face issue with the funds coming in, especially when they're starting out new, it's their first time foundings, or maybe they have here and there's a couple of ventures, but there's always struggle with the funds flowing in. So what is the state with the coffee space, and is the coffee space open for angel investing or in order to get the coffee space at a better level than today?
Yes, no, thanks for the question. Given the market, the burden of proof for startups to raise funds have become higher. So the level of traction you need to show, the valuation, etc., has shifted to reflect the current conditions. But yeah, ourselves, we are in the midst of raising at the moment. So we're raising a 500K pre-seed. We are slightly over halfway there. We have done 300K. So we're just looking to close the other 200 in the next 2 to 4 weeks, or maybe at the latest by the end of the year. That is the plan. And it's interesting, when we were preparing for our interviews, for our interview with Y Combinator before, we had Y Combinator founders interview us. Quite a few of them became angel investors. We currently have 6 Y Combinator backed founders as angel investors. So that's some of the people who have backed us, some exited founders as well. Given the space we are building in, it makes sense. They have a soft spot for it. We are in the midst of raising at the moment, and we are open to interested strategic investors who might be interested in the space.
Yeah, so that's wonderful to understand that you're open for that. And how our viewers or the audience can help you? Can they invest as well, or it has to be a venture capitalist who come and invest with you?
Actually, at this point, we do have a VC that has committed, but angels have shown to be very valuable allies to have as part of the journey. They have made intros. They have helped review things. They have helped to sit down with us for strategy calls. We are definitely open to angels.
And what is the minimum funding that you look forward from the angels, and what are you looking forward to give back to them, like say in an year or a couple of years of span or whatever?
The minimum investment we have set is $10,000 for the round. And in terms of, it's a startup, so it's high risk investment. 90% of startups go to zero. Of course, you have the 10% that goes to the returns. If it works, of course, that's just, it can be 10, 50, 100x, right? Or more. That is just the risk structure of investments within this space. So of course, it's important to allocate risk accordingly. You cannot be someone puts half of their net worth into one startup. That's just not how it works. It's diversifying within the stock market. You diversify within your startup investments as a percentage of overall portfolio. Yeah.
I think we got an idea, because it's a high risk investment, you really can't comment on the ROIs of it.
Exactly. So to comment on the ROI is tricky. Of course, in terms of possible exit plans, we do have competitors who got bought over, like Co-Founders Lab. They started 10 years ago. They raised 1.4 million and were bought over by an LA-based media company. There are a few other competitors that have raised as well, but it's hard to say how long it will take for and what kind of returns it could be, because it could be that it gets acquired, or of course, if it gets big enough, it could go to the public market with an IPO, or of course it could fail. All circumstances are possible, but it is an exciting market. It is a problem that we have found to be very real and very painful for people who have it. And it's beyond just people looking for immediate co-founders, anyone exploring ideas. If you just want someone else to explore that business ideas within the tech ecosystem or beyond, you should be able to do it like dating apps. Basically, 10 years ago, dating, people didn't know that online dating would be a thing. They would say like you should find people from your circles, whether it's from family referrals, friend referrals, from your school, work. Is the same, but we feel like, but that's changed. 25% of long-term relationships in America right now are from people who meet online. So we think there should be a world where you can just find your business partner on an app as a possible avenue. The traditional way will still be there, just like dating, but this is a additional way that will work for some people. For many people.
I'm sure. I'm very positive about it that this will work, because not all the time in your network people can connect on the same ideas or they have the same passion to drive with.
At the same time.
And it is also a possibility where the global connect can happen and we can solve some different problems in a very different manner. So I do see a lot of potential with CoffeeSpace, and I hope you really get some angel investments through this podcast. And if you get it, please let us know that the Passionate Pulse podcast has provided you something that will become our success story as well, and that can really set a good background and a good stage for a lot of founders like you who are like really working very hard and smartly at the same time. And we really wish that the CoffeeSpace should succeed. So viewers, whoever is looking forward to see if there is a perfect product or a kind of a product where you are looking forward to invest at a very early stages, CoffeeSpace is one of them, where they are looking forward to raise their angel investing rounds. And they're looking forward to raise in this particular 500K, around midway, they are already there. They're looking forward to pour with the more hands so that they can build with smart resources. They can get the CoffeeSpace more smart, more AI friendly, and equipped with the right resources to solve the problem that exists today in a much efficient way. I think it is always a teamwork. It is always when there anybody who is starting up new, it is a time where they need that helping ecosystem. Sometimes it is with the fund, sometimes it is with the volunteering, sometimes it could be also the internship that they may get forward to. Of course, they have a good journey to march on, but we look forward for your hands. And if you want to reach out to Hazim, I'll be listing down the LinkedIn URL where you can reach out to him and you can have one-on-one conversations with him and figure it out whether that's a right fit for you. But so far, whatever journey that we have unfolded with the CoffeeSpace, I'm sure you get an idea about the problem that they're solving, how really focused they are, and how they have shaped up their minds in order to solve these problems. So look forward for that. And do mention in the comments whether this was helpful as an audience for you, as a different type of investor for you, whether this was really a helpful call. If yes, that makes us going, that makes us support many other startups that comes on our stage. Hazim, any other opinion you would like to have or mention it to viewers?
No, I think that one covered most of the things because we closed a couple of angel investors in the past week as well. And the story is becoming clearer. We revamped the deck quite a bit to make the flow of the presentation also clearer. At that point on changing how you find a business partner, just like how people have changed finding romantic partners through these apps. The one thing I really wanted to include is
there are also angel investing. Are they coming to any of useful, or maybe those angel investing platforms are not so known? Would you like to name some one or two where you are already hosting the calls or something?
I've read on them, but no, I have not used them yet. So at the moment, it's current investors introducing to other investors, or founder yesterday, yeah, I met a founder who's investing and he is introducing to his angel investors. It's just a lot easier when it's a warm intro from a current investor or a new investor coming on board. They're much more likely to want to immediately just introduce to like one or two people who they think, okay, you should talk to this person. Yeah.
So maybe those angel investing platforms, we should bring someone from who is like founder of those angel investing platforms to solve another problem, or what, why this visibility is lacking, solving the co-founder problem. Similarly, the angel investing, it can build some nice industry or discipline where people can bet on and grow from there. It's a good
Agree.
ecosystem to have.
Agree. Agree.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for taking out time, Hazim. We'll
You
just
too.
touch base with your the family part. It's a very interesting journey. When I look at Hazim, and I'd really like to open this up in front of the viewers because he comes from a background where his father was a doctor. And the obvious thought of a doctor's son is he would be a doctor. He will be pursuing the field where his fathers have already made some impacts and have some establishments and everything. So from there, like obviously as a kid, you were interested in that. How your journey turned to accounting, the finance, and finally you ended up being one of the finance analysts.
Yeah. So that story basically, my dad is a radiologist. When I was growing up, to spend time with my dad, I needed to go to the hospital with him for his on call nights. My siblings and I will rotate. And I remember this was like 5, 6 year old me, right? My dad will ask me to come up to the x-ray thing and which part of the body is this, Hazim, you think? Like, yeah, based on the x-ray scans. Growing up, being exposed to the whole medical sector from an early age, it was the only thing I wanted to do. Like, until the age of 16, my ambition was to be a neurosurgeon. That was what I wanted to do. But I went to a boarding school in Malaysia that was rather unique in the sense that it's a private boarding school started by a billionaire who built the highways of Malaysia in the 1990s. And he built this school as a way to give back to society. It's a private school, but during my time, everyone got a scholarship. So you went through 4 stages of interviews. From 4,000 applicants, 60 people are accepted into that batch. At the age of 12, you go through this. I had no idea at the time how important. You're 12 years old. But by some luck, I got into this school, and the billionaire is an accountant. He did finance accounting in New Zealand, and in my high school, accounting was compulsory. Everyone needed to do that as one of the subjects for the high school public examination. And at the end of the penultimate year of high school, at the age of 16, we had to come up with a document, a 10-page like folio to research what you want to do after high school. And this is unique. Not all schools do this, but we had a school career counselor, Miss Lai, and this project basically, okay, I'm not going to do this folio on medicine. Like, yeah, I've already been exposed. I've learned about what medicine means my whole life. Let me just do this as a passion research project. So I did it in accounting because I love numbers. I love math. And this is the closest in Malaysia, at least you will think accounting is the professional job. So you have lawyers, doctors, engineers, and accountants are like the closest to, and because the billionaire founder of the school was an accountant. It was just doing that folio one night. And ironically, in my dad's hall, I was in his office. He sent me, I was working there all night long. I think my dad left home about 10 p.m., picked me up 6 a.m. the next day. When I finished the portfolio, and I just told him that I think, Papa, yeah, I think I'm changing my ambition to be an accountant. Or I want to be in this finance, accounting, economics field. And he told me maybe you need some sleep.
I can imagine his.
Not because he was against it, but yeah, after 16 years saying you want to become something after one night of research,
Right.
that was the start of it, of course. There were more things I needed to validate, people I needed to talk to, but it was basically because of this assignment at school that I changed. Of course, it was also the scholarships that were available. There were a lot more companies in Malaysia offering scholarships for finance accounting than medicine specifically, right? So there were a few variables that went into it. So
Yes, I think the ecosystem that happened at that point of time when you were growing up did help you to find out what exactly, and also these kind of projects that made you introspect more.
Yeah.
whether this really fits your needs, and going further. I think the kids should get exposed to various projects in various subjects so they really find out and validate themselves that this is where they belong or this is where they find a resonance. Yeah, that's an exciting story. And I think a lot of schools should factor in. If the audience viewers, if anybody is in the education field, I would really appeal high that these are the type of projects you can create. There is a lot of creativity that still exists outside the fixed curriculum. And
Yeah.
if we can cater the kids accordingly, I think we will have a brilliant innovators like Hazim coming forward and doing and solving problems in the society that exists and where we need to advance faster to bring the innovations together. Yeah. So that is one part of your story. I must touch up his mom's story, which is a breathtaking story. So after the kids went to college, what happened, Hazim? I'm very interested in understanding your mom's story.
Yes, she told us, all of you are at university now. I'm bored. I'll do my PhD. And she
Uh,
was 58 at the time. So we were like, okay, you're working full time. So she is a full time lecturer of economics, business management, corporate ethics. But to be a full time lecturer and do a PhD part time and start at the age of 58, that is, I mean, that is quite rare. But of course, right, we supported her. I mean, like, he told us that, yeah, we should do whatever we want. And if we put our hearts and mind to it, just do it. And that's what she did. So she finished it at 63, became the eldest ever graduate of the same university. So it's the same university she teaches. The supervisor had the office right in front of her. So yeah, that made it very easy in terms of like communicating with the PhD supervisor. Yeah, that is my mom. And we are all infinitely inspired by her.
I'm sure. I think I would like to talk to her over the podcast to really understand what went behind and
Yeah.
how she triggered up at the age of 58. And it was a lot of people think, oh my God, like half of the life I cater my kids, my family, and met the needs. And now it's my time for vacationing. It's my time to do the world tour. But she picked up on her bucket list, which was long time left behind. And I think that's a phenomenal example if she can come forward and talk about it.
I think like, yeah, I think she'll be happy to. If you do, let me know. I'll connect you with her.
Yeah, you're a great connector, I know. So that's about your mom's journey. And there is something else happened while you were at MIT when you were supporting the Malaysian students and catering certain events. So your entrepreneurship skills actually started shining since you were on the board of students and you did a very different activities that never existed where the MIT has continued your legacy. Would you like to talk about the Tony story?
So this was actually while I was in the UK. This was a very important turning point-ish. I mean, it's one of those memories in life that, yeah, just changes you forever. This was a random dinner, 2014 rather, the dinner in November in London. So I was a student in Warwick University at the time, and there was this private student dinner with Tony Fernandez, CEO of AirAsia. You don't imagine you can have a private dinner with him, even if it's 70 people. Sure, not I wasn't on the same table, but he came with his friends, and he owns Queen's Park Rangers, the football team. They just lost an EPL game, like English Premier League game that day. So he came to dinner right after that with his friends. He wasn't really in a good mood. So when he gave the speech and all, you could see like, yeah, he was quite disappointed that his team lost. But after the whole dinner, etc., people, of course, as much as he is a businessman, he is like a celebrity. So a lot of people took pictures with him. But yeah, my friend beside me poked me and like, Hazim, I think you should pitch your idea about that Southeast Asian political, socioeconomic, geopolitical conference to Tony. Yeah. And I'm like, but we don't have a proposal. We don't have really a pitch. What do we say? Yeah. He's like, I don't know, Azim, but we don't take this shot now, we're not going to have the chance again. If you want him to be your first main backer of this new event, like, yeah, this new conference for Southeast Asians in the whole of UK for the first time ever, you better take this chance. So both of us walked. Of course, my friend pushed me one step further so that I'll be the one talking. I was just one step ahead of him in terms of like how close I was to Tony, and like, okay, I guess I have to say something now. I said, Tony, can I have a minute of your time? I have an idea to share. And he's like, yeah, sure, of course, go ahead. And I went to your talk in London School of Economics about 1-2 weeks ago, where you gave a talk about how is ASEAN still relevant? ASEAN as in Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the EU equivalent for Southeast Asia. So building on points on that talk, I want to start the first ever Warwick ASEAN conference. And he smiled, like, yeah, he couldn't really say no, right? He gave a 2-hour talk on why ASEAN is relevant. So it's like, I like the sound of this idea. But just answer me this one question. Is this going to be Malaysian ASEAN thing or an ASEAN thing? And it's a simple question. But the thing is, when something is branded ASEAN in Singapore, Malaysia, or Brunei, or Thailand, overwhelmingly, usually it's people of that country in the organizing committee coming to the event. The exception is just Singapore, probably. A lot of people can fly easily to Singapore, but for the most part, it's never really a diverse representative group, as representative as it can be or should be, rather. So I knew I needed a quick answer for him. For you, Tony, I'll make it an ASEAN thing. And that's it. Yeah, he just put out his hand like, I like your spirit. I like your idea. I don't know if you really have a plan. Send it over. But yeah, I want to back you. I want to fund you guys. I'll be your keynote speaker. So
Wow.
is this 30, 45 seconds of like just going for it, right? Talking to basically, a near billionaire, like, and just seeing what happens. The worst is just he can say no, right? But what if he says yes? And in this particular case, he said yes. So that became, and the conference has happened every year since. It is a legacy that my friends and I in that founding committee are very, very grateful for. And yeah, it has happened since 2015 till now. So it's already in its 9th edition already. So
Wow. So I must admire your spirit of taking the chances. And this is where I like to open up to audience and say it, that no matter what, you have to take your chance. If you don't take a chance, where the paths will head, or how your magic touch will come and create some different sort of legacy. So this is one of the important part that's where I asked him to open up on the story, because it takes a lot of courage being a student, going and talking to a celebrity that is a celebrity, a billionaire entrepreneur running multiple business lines and having different portfolios. So you're talking to a actually shining star, which is walking in front of you. But rather than just taking a picture, why don't we collaborate? I mean, he did not have any barriers there to thought about what he would really think about me. Would he really give in a minute to me or no? He just went in by all means. And since his desire was so strong, he knew the ideas clearly. I think everything helped him to gather that courage and speak up. And this was a very phenomenal example of speaking up, getting the results, and moving forward. And look what has happened, that confidence which is running for that entire geopolitical regions, and the point where people are coming together to that summit. It is helpful. It is catering many, where there are many wonderful keynote speakers are available, accessible to lot many students that they're looking forward, and it has opened up a big stage. So that's an amazing contribution.
I just go for it. Like, if you should consider what is the potential upside, what is the potential downside. And for the most part, many things, if you don't try it, you'll never know. At least if you try it, it could happen. And at least you actually gave it your shot. You gave it your best.
So let's begin the rapid fire now. I'll start with the rapid fire, and I'll ask you some questions rapidly, or you bring it on the fire with the answers. Yeah.
Okay.
So at this point of time, just imagine that you have unlimited resources and the best quality resources that you desire to have. Don't think about the budget. Everything is laid up and you have everything that you want. So now what is that one thing you like to build?
It's very fascinating. Unlimited resources. So given my background with the World Bank, this development economics, solving poverty-ish. So if there's a way to basically solve poverty, whether that's a sustainable way for people who, rather than unemployment checks, etc., how do you get these people to be upskilled, educated, reskilled, especially with the the cost of education is basically going very low. So it will probably be giving access to internet education to people. That will be, but whether it's a for-profit, non-profit, whether it can at least be a social enterprise, but that is something that is very close and dear to my heart, simply because that was what pulled me to the World Bank as well.
Wow, that's a different shift we see. And I think many towards the higher end goal, this is where I see the answers. And it's a good thing to know that we are in a good world where there are people thinking about the good causes and thinking about the bringing equanimity. I'm not sure the equanimity, but good balance at least to the world. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What is that one book or a documentary or maybe any incident that has touched your life that ignited the spark of being an entrepreneur?
So the incidence was actually that conversation with Kartik, the 17-year-old. It was that particular moment that I realized, okay, if one chat can be so valuable, can change someone's life, and this is literally just 15, 20, 30 minutes of my time, it could be even less, right? You could do a 10, 15-minute call and you don't know what could happen, what it could mean to the other side. It was that particular conversation in March 2013 that, I think kickstarted this whole thing.
Wow. What is the next thought crosses your mind when you hear mass layoffs?
Mass layoffs, historically, this just means it's a restructuring phase that humans have to go through to get to the next phase. And this will happen again because of AI. A lot of jobs will be lost. As Industrial Revolution before, humans just find a way to make use of the new technology and see where they best fit given the structural changes of the economy. So to me, sure, it is painful, but it is an opportunity to reskill and to make ourselves even more future-proof and ready what new changes are coming our way, which are inevitable. And it is also a way, a period where you can self-reflect. Maybe it's when you can actually start scratching that itch of the idea you wanted to start working on. Honestly, it's painful, but you should always look at the silver lining. And it is the time, suddenly the freedom you have, at least from time-wise. Of course, psychologically, you're going to want to find another job because of course, the monthly bills, etc., that you will have to pay. But it comes with its own set of silver lining. So that's my view on it.
It's a good view. And I think very apt and hand in hand to think about rather than getting upset about things. And it's a phase that every economic crush will happen in order to grow further. And the world sees it in a very different, innovative model. Industrial economics, if you look at historically, it has its own down phases. But after that, we went on to different industry wise, and now we are living in the knowledge industry, the information industry, which is even nobody has predicted that it will have a predictable time. So the things will happen. What is the next metaphor that comes to your mind when I say leadership?
To me, leadership is you lead by example. So that's always what comes to mind. You want to inspire people. You want to get a whole team motivated about working on solving a specific thing towards a certain goal. You have to lead by example. Walking the talk is very important. So when I think of leadership, I think of walking the talk.
Wow. Wonderful. And the last question of the rapid fire. So since you have been 2 times founder now, you better understand the first time founders facts and what goes within the turbulence period. But which is the most ignored fact that you see that the first timer founders are into? They just ignore that particular fact and they just march the journey.
It's marriage to the problem rather than the solution, the idea. You should be obsessed about the problem and how to solve that problem rather than being so attached to an idea, because the idea will change as you learn more about what problem you are solving exactly for whom. So do not be attached to idea, but be attached to the problem.
Wow, that's a wonderful tip. Yeah. So now while winding up the show, I'd like to ask you one question, because in few years of span, you could have 2 startups, successful, not successful. That's a different measurement to look at as an individual founder, but it is successful in terms of bringing out the impact. And with the CoffeeSpace, how you're marching up, I'm seeing closely watching that journey. It's moving even further, and it is solving very important problems that people are facing towards finding co-founders, getting that right ecosystem. So it's one of the great steps I see that you are on. So with your experience being so young, finding your co-founders, still making something into the life, what is your advice? I mean, you will get blown away if I ask the advice, but what is your experiences from where you have learned, and that learning you can maybe tell to the people who are looking forward to start something but are very struggling in a very initial phases, and it's their first time startup where they want to take a step ahead and bring their ideas to life. So what would be your learning experience as an advice you can cater?
I would say the most important thing is validating, like iterating. So whatever you think is correct, it may be correct for you, may be correct for some people, but the deeper you understand the problem you're solving, the more likely you are to be able to solve it, and the more you'll know it is a problem that is at the scale you want to solve at. Because there are problems which, and again, right, is the kind of business you're trying to build. Is venture backable business? Is it a SME? Is it more of a cash flow generating business rather than one which has to have immense growth before it can reach any level of profitability or revenue? So these are questions you need to ask early. Back to the first book we read, The Mom Test, you have to validate, talk to the people who have the problems, learn about it deeper. That's where you will start coming up, okay, if this is the problem, what if this is the solution? Does this help with you? Does this differentiate enough from the solutions out there for you to even want to give it a try? And not just giving it a try, ultimately it is, would you pay to solve this? Because you want to solve hair. I mean, it depends on the asset. If it's a startup you want to build, it better be a hair on fire problem for a lot of people. A hair on fire problem is one such that if your hair is on fire, you want to solve it now. You will prefer water to solve it, but you'll use a brick to solve it because whatever you can do to get that fire off. And that is the equivalent here. Your MVP might be very simple, but if it's a very painful problem, people are going to give it a try. And from there, you will. And just like ourselves from Council Lab, we didn't know it was how the journey was going to be from there, iterating, learning more about different kinds of potential users, customers, markets, to then iterate, zoom, pivot into different things. And it is a rite of passage, learning things, and you can learn the theory, you can listen to the videos, books, but there are just certain things you will learn by doing. And the startup school is the school of life, and it has to be something you actually go through and experience in the real world.
Wow, that's a wonderful message. It's a startup school is nothing but actually you're experiencing that every time as a part of the growth, and that's your startup school of life. Wow, I think from this particular curation of the Hazim story, I think there are so many take that I see, starting with the rapid fire advice questions or even unfolding a lot of his journey and how he is building out. I think there are a lot of practical wisdom that he has experienced has come out so well. And well, it was really pleasure meeting you, Hazim, at the first place, and now coming onto the podcast and revealing a lot of the important facts in the startup or the entrepreneurship journey. It means a lot to Passionate Pulse podcast, as well as the audience who are looking forward in tuning in to get different guidance. It could be a career guidance, sometime entrepreneurship guidance that they receive through this podcast, and it really means a lot. So audience, if you really love this podcast, give a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. That's one of the ways where we understand that our audience looks forward for more, and it's a two-way handshake that keeps us moving with further guests, bringing on to the different niches that our audience are looking forward. So don't forget to comment if you like this show. What was the most important takeaway from the Hazim story or overall of his conversation that you would take it away? That means a lot to Hazim and to us. We are doing all these conversations in public so that a lot of people in this digitally equalized world gets the right. So that's our motivation behind starting this channel. And just make sure that all your feedbacks, let them come in And let us know which other guest you would like to cover, or is there any field where you are looking forward to the guidance and that Passionate Pearl should cater for you. So don't forget to mention your comments. We read all your comments and we look into that, find the right relevant industries, find relevant masters to come onto the podcast. So stay tuned to Passionate Pearls. And thank you, Hazim, for spending your important time, especially now when you are churning your coffee space at a different level.
Thanks so much. I mean, really glad to be here. I really appreciate the invite.
I hope you enjoyed the talk.
Absolutely.
Thank you.